Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. There it is. And we're cranking, we're live, we're recording, and I am so excited for this one. Who are we talking to today? He is a data-driven marketing leader, an entrepreneur, and you got to know, he's been involved in some pretty amazing projects, and we're going to talk to him about those today. That's right now, top 10 internet retailer he's been involved with, the top 10 mobile app, top 40 US website property, and a top 5 US mobile site. And now today, on the top podcast in the galaxy. I don't remember the source of that, but somewhere in the back. But yeah, you're the top podcast in the galaxy, serial CMO and CTO at the same time, oftentimes. He took Overstock from 3 million in rev to 800 million. He's a growth monster, co-founder and chief strategy officer at Demand Jump, referred to as the head troublemaker, I will say. Shawn Schwegman, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks, Casey. It's great to be here. Really appreciate you pulling me on the show. I love the show, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I was going to say, how'd we get you on here? But you know what? This is the top podcast of the galaxy.
Exactly.
So, we're not just looking for North America. It's just like intergalactic here. So a Voyager probe, on its journey way out in the distance is listening to us, I'm sure. So great. This is insane. There's so many things to talk about. So I'm just going to shut up and pass you this thing. It's heavy, but I know you work out. So here you go. Ugh. Okay. Here you go. You got it?
Yep. I'm on it.
You got to actually grab it. There you go. Okay. There you go. Okay. Thors Hammer, man. That is the actual Thor. It's not a replica. That is Thor's actual hammer. Take that from me. Smash some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully I am worthy of picking up that hammer. But the first one I would say, we do a lot in and around content marketing. Content marketing matters a lot to B2B companies. And I always hear that it takes a lot of words. The latest study says it takes sometimes over 2,000 words to rank #1 on Google, and it takes 6 months to sort of get there. That is absolutely not true at all. It is not about word count. It's about the right words in order to rank. We've had great luck and experience in seeing pages that have 300 or 400 words rank well above those that have 1,800 or 2,000 words.
Really?
And it really comes down to understanding the network of content. And you'll hear me talk a lot about this concept of a network because the world just isn't linear. There's connections between things. And, the average user does a whole bunch of different searches before they buy, and they consume a lot of content along their journey. And all that is sort of interrelated and connected, much like a network or a brain.
Okay.
So it does not take 2,000 words to win the #1 spot at Google. You just have to have the right words on the page.
Man, tell me about this voodoo powder you sprinkled on that 300-page post that dominated all the 2,000 plus 8 million page articles on the same topic using the keyword 30,000 times. It's this interrelated network. What specifically, can you share the magic voodoo? What made that happen?
Sure. So it was actually dumb luck, I think, at the time. But as we started dissecting it and analyzing it and really on our path to understand consumer behavior, what we found was that, think about your own behavior. If you do a search for something, let's say you want to buy a big screen TV, right? You do a search for big screen TV, then you might see, gosh, there's LED and OLED and 4K and this and that. And so you execute more and more searches. And even if you look at Google or Bing, they kind of tell you the beginning of that network. And they do that by showing you people that search for this also ask these questions, or these are related searches. Those are all connections. And Google and Bing surface those things that they see consumers do next, right? If I search for big screen TV, one of the top questions might be, should I buy a 4K TV or whatever? So if we kind of don't believe in reverse engineering, Google or Bing's algorithms to try and figure out, how they work. We really don't care. I think that's kind of a recipe for a disaster if you're one algorithm away from extinction,
Right.
in my mind. But if you really focus on consumer behavior, which it just so happens, Google and Bing, their search engine result page is highly optimized towards consumer behavior and trying to anticipate your next move and what you're going to ask next or what you're going to search for next. Think about it as what we've been able to do is this isn't exactly how it works, but it's a good way to think about it, to wrap your head around it. But if you did a search, if you said, Shawn, my business sells big screen TVs and that's what I care about, we would start with that search, grab all the data on the page, right? Maybe the top 100 results. And then we do simultaneous searches for the top questions and the top related searches. There's typically about 4 related questions and about 8 related searches. So one search turns into 12, 12 turns into 144, 144 turns into a 1700, and 1700 turns into like 20,000 searches to map out just a couple degrees of separation away from where you started, right? Big screen TV.
Wow.
Map out all of that data and look at how the connections that exist. And the secret sauce isn't in the data. The secret sauce is in the math that you use to process and rank the data. And we have a patent now on that math. The data we get from a number of different sources. It's really the power of the math to look at and process tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of connections in very fast sort of time span. And you can't really do that in today's relational databases. We use a lot of graph database to process the network around a given topic or content pillar.
Okay.
And that's really, really important because it allows us to figure out, if I care about big screen TVs, or I care about accounting services, or I care about or sell some sort of SaaS technology or SaaS product, I need to know as a marketer how I should prioritize my content roadmap. What should I be writing about? What really matters through the lens of the user and the consumer? And another myth I'll just say.
Hold on before we get to that. We need
Sure.
to dissect this one because this is really good. 2 questions. First one's going to be caveman catch up, so that I can catch up to everyone else who's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then the second one is a little more smart and techie. First, you mentioned that you have that sort of starting search, and then that can turn into related questions and related searches. I noticed the related questions didn't match the number of related searches. There was, I think you said like 4, and then there was 8. There's more of what. Could you describe what are those 2 things you're looking at next?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you just do a search on Google today, you'll see people also search for or questions people ask, related questions, and Google puts it now so far to the top of the page. So does Bing, and they do that on purpose, right? Because 10, 15 years ago, we did a search of 1 or 2 or 3 words. Now we're asking our search engine full-length questions, right?
I see them. I just did the TV example that we were talking about, and then I see related searches, Costco TV, Walmart. I did the TV, and Walmart TV buying guide. So these are, and then I see 8 related searches to that initial search that I had.
That's right. And if you look towards the top of the page, you should see related questions.
You're right. People also, so there's people also ask and related searches.
That's right. So what Google and Bing are doing is saying that, okay, for the people that search for big screen TVs, they go on to search for these other related searches, or they go on to ask these other related questions. Now, what you'll see is related searches is all the way at the bottom of the page.
Yeah.
But the related questions are way up top, typically above, in between the paid ads and the organic listings. They are prime real estate, most of the time above the fold. So why would Google and Bing do that? Well, they do it because it's important, because it matters, because people ask questions, and questions show an incredibly high degree of intent.
Got it. So now I understand those two different areas. This is great because I'm familiar with the ad spots and everything, but these are innovations that weren't around back when I first started using AOL, back in the 50s.
That's right.
Innovation, man. Okay, so knowing that every search has multiple follow-on questions, related questions and related searches, you're gathering that data, and you showed how like one question can turn into 12. Is the methodology then to think about what all those initial questions might be, or do you then follow this? You then go to where's the best place to purchase a TV? You go to that question.
Yep. So think of us as you start with a category, a topic,
Okay.
right? A product, and you do that search. And then when you execute that search on Google, you'll see those 4 related questions and 4 related searches. So we kind of take that and do 12 searches. So we search for each one of those and grab that data. And then we repeat that process n number of times until we've mapped out enough of that network of really consumer behavior. It's a knowledge graph for everything that matters in and around a given topic or starting point. And like I said, the data, everybody has the data. Understanding how to process the data and understanding the math to apply to it to rank it properly is the most important factor. And then the kicker is it changes at a rate of right around 20% almost every single week, meaning there's so much movement and some topics are a little bit more evergreen than others, but for the most part, there's so much net new behavior occurring. As a matter of fact, I think Google released a study or a metric rather a few years ago that the amount of searches that are done on Google, I mean, it's in the trillions, but every year they were looking at a stat of what percentage of searches were net new. They've never seen them before. And the number grew up to 16%. I think it's even 18 or 20%, but somewhere in that 16 to 20% range is the quantity of searches that are net new. Google's never seen them before in a given time frame. So user behavior changes, right? A new TV comes out, right? And then there's 4K, now there's 8K, now there's a whole nother set of questions. Should I buy a 4K or an 8K question? So you just have to kind of stay on top of that. I mean, the data outside your walls matters 10 times more than the data that you have kind of inside your walls when it comes to really aligning to consumer behavior.
I think that's a great soundbite. If that isn't one, I'm sure there'll be 30 more. But what you just said, the idea of the data that's out there is often more important than the data that and I think I've done this, but you can treat the data you have as like gold on in a dragon's den that you're trying to protect, not only realizing that you're not acquiring gold or list members, and it's constantly disappearing underneath you. You don't even realize it. Like people move jobs, they atrophy. Like those contact database lists you're so proud of are constantly becoming irrelevant. And so it's not gold at all in a cave. It's like currency in a bank. You got a little loan and you try to get as much out of it as you can while it's still relevant. But the fact that it's that data that's outside that's also constantly changing, and there's value there. Could you, and I know that this is the complicated stuff where this is where you need AI. This is where you need, demand jump. This is where you need technology. But if you were to manually try to attempt this, what is happening when you have all these interrelated searches? What are the connections? And then what is the end result? What knowledge are you getting that you're able to then use in SEO or whatever? What can you use out of that? What is that analysis, and then how can you use it?
Yep. So there's a type of math theory called graph theory, and another component. I want to geek out too much here, but I would say another component called algebraic topology that allows us to kind of bend time a little bit as we process that graph. But imagine, what a spreadsheet.
Did you say bend time? Are we making this like the Joe Rogan podcast?
Yeah,
finally?
exactly.
Can we light up?
Exactly. But you have to understand, like, a spreadsheet or a database table traditionally is very sort of linear, right? Columns
Yeah.
and rows. But connections to things and to people, that's a graph, that's a network, right? I might be connected to you on LinkedIn and you're connected to other people on LinkedIn, and therefore I'm loosely connected to those people on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And as you add more connections and I add more connections, that network changes and evolves. But the link is a connection. I have, friended you on Facebook, or we've connected on LinkedIn. Similarly, when you look at search or content data, a search term is connected to other related search terms, and a search term is connected to questions, related questions, and those questions and those related search terms are connected to other things. And so if you just think about the world differently, instead of just a spreadsheet of data, if you think about it completely differently, about connections and a connectivity and what's connected to what, right? It's what's that saying, the 7 degrees of separation between you and Kevin Bacon.
Kevin
It's
Bacon.
kind of like that, but for content. So if I'm going to write about a big screen TV, if you process the data correctly, the data will tell you that, hey, if you're going to write about big screen TV, you also need to write about these other things inside of that article. So going back to that Mythbuster, what's that saying? Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, right?
Yeah.
Content marketers that have never understood the science have been at somewhat a disadvantage. And so we kind of throw a basic approach of, well, what's the average amount of words that are in the number one result? Well, the average is right around 2,000, give or take a few hundred words. But just because that's the average doesn't mean that that's what it takes. What it takes is making sure that if you're writing about a piece of content that you want to rank for a certain search term, that you're also including in that content the things that search engines would expect. Now, you're not, again, trying to unwind how Google or Bing's algorithms work. We don't care. What we care about is consumer behavior. When a consumer cares about big screen TVs, what do they then go on to search for or ask about? And if you just knew that, if you had a crystal ball, right, and that crystal ball told you, oh, here's all the things that matter, that's what we spent 6 years and many millions of dollars building from an AI perspective at Demand Jump to really solve that problem and make it turnkey. So now you can say, I want to write about this, click a button, and here's a content outline that's packed with everything you need to write about in that piece of content. So all your SEO and keyword research done in a blink of an eye, and the output is whatever you want to write about. Here is a content outline that includes everything that you need to know or include in that article in order to win. And it's working really well. We're actually, it was true what they say, that cobbler's son has no shoes. So we
Right.
built a great marketing platform, but we never really focused on our own marketing until about a year and a half ago. In the last 12 months, we've grown 10x in our organic traffic, and our leads, inbound leads, have gone up 10x. Like, what B2B marketer wouldn't want 10x growth in a year? And we really just did it by writing the content that our platform was telling us to write. And for each piece of content, including the words that Demand Jump told us that we need to write about.
Okay, this is fantastic. And I think this is one of the areas that gets neglected. A lot of conversation about the MQL being dead, not a lot of conversation around understanding that beast called Google, especially in the organic side. It's almost like it's safer on the paid side because you can at least kind of get a sense that you're trading something for something. Um, it- and you brought up a great point that when you strike gold, it may not always be the reason you think it is. It isn't necessarily the 2K. It's that whole correlation and causation thing. Just because this posted well and it has 2,000 words doesn't mean every post needs 2,000 words. In this case, definitely not. And, one that beat it without that many words. Tell me about why, what about these posts when they're written with this outline? Is there a reward inherent with minding the connections, or what about that why is it getting the reward? Why is it doing better? Yeah, maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, the first thing I'd say is if you, no one knows how Google or Bing really works except Google or Bing, right? Everybody
Right. Yeah.
guesses. And so I'll just say, I reserve the right to be smarter tomorrow as new data is released.
Right.
But Google and Bing have both said that they do consider other pages on your site for any one page ranking. Now, they also say, hey, that page, we look at that page heavily, and that's the bulk of it. But we also look at other signals across your website. But they're not clear at all on what those signals are. So my belief, and again, I reserve the right to be smarter tomorrow, but my belief is what they're looking for is contextual relevance and a complete network, a network of interconnected content. And if you have an incomplete network, they don't let you rank for anything. Now, maybe you get lucky here or there, but what we've really embraced and have put into action, you can see it. I mean, if you do a search right now on Google for marketing attribution, we're, I think, number 4, right behind Salesforce, HubSpot, and Wikipedia. It's a really great position to be in a highly competitive space. And there's a lot of content that went into that. It's not about just that one page. There were 30 or 40 pieces of content, all covering different aspects of that.
You even beat Neil Patel out. He's 5th. He's probably pissed about it.
Yeah, absolutely. You can do another search for like consumer insights, and consumer insights, you'll see Google or Demand Jump is probably in the top couple of results there. And then you can also see it if you do a search for what is a good CAC, CAC. So what is a good customer acquisition cost? Demand Jump is number 1. And we're number 1 with a blog that has less than 350 words in it, outranking HubSpot, Neil Patel, and a host of others that have almost 2,000 words in their articles, anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000. And so why? Because we used the right words on the page. We knew that when it came to like, what is a good CAC, people also ask about benchmarks. They ask about industry stats. And so we included that in that article, and it ranked number 1 with almost no content. And I shouldn't say almost no, there are 350 words, but it's the right words and the right anticipation of consumer behavior, right? What are they going to ask for or care about next?
Yeah, this post, this is it seems like a model post that we should put it in the show notes here, because there's a video right off the bat in case you don't want to read. There's the industry benchmarks you're mentioning right at the top, which is intriguing. Like you said, consumer behavior. It's okay. See also.
And most of the content and the stats that are in that article are not ours. We're pointing to another third party that put the stats out. We just formatted it in a different way. Wow. So we are giving credit to, via source links to them. And Google does favor, Google and Bing, they all favor external links and sources and stuff like that. So
do you follow that over to Propeller, or do they get a little love?
I believe it's a follow link. I might be wrong on that, but we don't really care about follow versus no follow.
Is it just like totally window dressing at this point?
I think so, but again, I reserve nobody really. I'll preface it with nobody knows the answer to those questions, but we've chosen not to care about follow no follow. So yeah.
So for this particular, were the insights into the fact that the benchmarks were important? Was that something that crunching all the data and then seeing the network effect, that was that like another search? So saying like, what is a good CAC? And then also, well, what is a good one for my industry? Yeah. Was that like a related search? And you kind of pulled it all together that, okay, so here's the full answer.
Yeah, great question. So we, Demand Jump, I would say that it's an evolution, right? Over 6 years, we set out to look at a lot of competitive data, to allow marketers to connect all of their data and to solve on the attribution problem. One of my favorite uber data-driven CMOs, Amit Shah at 1-800-Flowers, I remember showing him our platform to get his thoughts in the early days, and he made a comment I'll never forget. And he said, okay, but with this competitive data, I mean, Shawn, how do I know I'm not copying from the dumb kid in school, right? How do I know my competitors are doing it right? Like,
True.
And I didn't have an
Great
answer.
question.
Oh, I don't know. I guess you don't. But it sat and burned in the back of my brain for about a year. And what he's really asking is, competitive data is really a proxy for consumer behavior. When competitors do it right, they are aligning better to consumer behavior. Well, what if you could just bypass that? What if you could just understand consumer behavior in the blink of an eye, and then you don't care about your competitors, you just align your marketing initiatives directly to the way customers behave. And that led us down this path of, all right, how do we get these insights that marketers need and crave, and we all have our data,
Right.
but then you're really only as good as yesterday's numbers, right? How do we break out of that and get data about how our customer behaves in this moment, so that we can align our initiatives a lot better, take out a lot of the guesswork in marketing? And the truth is, Casey, in every company I've been involved with in the last 20 years, Overstock went from 3 million to 800 million in about a 5-year period. Cha went from 6 million monthly visits to, I think, 80 million monthly visits in about a 2-year period. This mobile app I was involved with went from nowhere to number 10, I think, in its category. And all of those growth stories, the growth occurred because we figured something out, and it was not the data that we had. It had nothing to do with our data. It was some insight around consumer behavior or competitive data that gave us an aha moment, some data outside our walls that where the light bulb just went on and we went, holy shit, this is unbelievable. And there's every growth story I've ever been involved with, exact same every single time. We figure something out based on data we didn't have, and that led to massive growth. And that's what we really set out at Demand Jump to productize, right? How do we get lightning in a bottle for marketers, right? How do we show them something that is absolutely amazing that no one is doing, that no one's done before, that we all want? Right. And so when we were in the early stages of trying to figure out this knowledge graph, where our goal was, within 15 minutes, I want to plug something in, so the category, a topic, something, and I want to see every bit of insight that I need to help me align to consumer behavior better and do my job more, and just really crush the numbers. And so what is a good CAC article was sort of the output of an early alpha of the math and the data and sort of what we had, that mission that we had set out to do. We basically used that as a little bit of an R&D project. And not only is it number one in Google, it took 2.5 weeks for it to rank number one and crush giants in the space, again, because it has the right words in that article. And that's when we knew that we were onto something, right? The other myth that you hear is it takes 6 months to rank for SEO. It doesn't. It takes 2.5 weeks if you do it right.
Really?
Yeah. And no SEO consultant wants to say that because they don't want to be on the hook for it, right? But
right. They like to kick the can down the road. Gosh, if I've only probably met one SEO person, if you want to consider yourself one, two, that isn't just selling snake oil, and it's like, ugh. But yeah, they're always kicking that can down the road. 6 months, then Google will reward you with the wrong keyword probably. But you're saying no, it doesn't?
No, not at all. And that is one of the biggest myths forever. And the truth is, the myth exists because people don't understand the science and the network behind it. Okay. Right? Content is a creative game, right? Meaning, if I had to write a blog, I would suck. It would take me, 2 days to write one simple blog article. I'm more of an analyst, a data person. I think you have some people are more creative, some people are more analytical, and it's a pendulum. You're not one or the other. There's, you can be both. But I definitely am way on the one side of analytical. Who writes content? Well, creative people write content, right? And a lot of times creative people struggle with the analytics and the data. Can they interpret it? Can they see it? Yes, but can they go grab it for themselves and slice and dice and twist and turn the data to find the answers? Not always. That's not their skill set. So think of Demand Jump as sort of enabling all of that. We're like the data scientist in your pocket for the content writer, where they can just say, I want to write about this. And we say, here's your outline and everything that you need to know in order to rank well. So that was our mission, and it's gone incredibly well. I think we produced over 14 or 15,000 content outlines in the first 3 months we launched that product. And our customers love it. It's led to incredible ratings and reviews on G2 Crowd. And
what's the one that does the content outlines?
That's our Insights product.
Insights, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we really have two products. We have Insights and then Attribution. So Insights give you the data you need to align better to consumer behavior, to write really good content, write faster, rank better, right? And then Attribution is then how do you know the average B2C. In B2C, it's about 6 to 8 marketing touch points on average before a conversion or a sale occurs. And B2B, I think the most recent study by Gartner or Forrester was around 22 to 26 marketing touch points that are required to lead, or on average that occur before a conversion event happens. So how do you attribute that conversion, that sale, to those many different touch points? That's like the greatest problem that's never been solved in marketing, right?
Right. And then you have people that are trying to get those touches all done in one day, thinking that, well, they heard 26 touches. Let me just email them 26 times. Yeah, not exactly. That's not what we're saying.
Exactly. I mean, it is a journey. And if you think about the world as a network, right? If you think about it as a, you think about your own journey when you go to buy something, you go buy a car, or you buy a TV, or you buy whatever. You don't just do one search and then buy, right? You do a search, you look at a couple of websites, you ask different questions or do different searches on the search engines. There might be several different paths different people take, but those are all connections in my mind in a network. And so when you look at, all right, now what do 1 million people do when they go to buy big screen TVs, and you put all of that data together, now you have a knowledge graph and a network of connectivity and interactions. And that all applies to content, which is also why if you have an incomplete network of content, sometimes the search engines won't let you rank at all for anything, right? And if you look at,
why do you think that is? Sort of have, I know we don't work at Google, but like, what does it say if you're incomplete, you're not answering all of the questions?
So if you look at the college paper that I think Sergey Brin and Larry Page wrote, it talks about contextual relevance, right? Meaning it's not just good enough to find a word on a page. Things have to be related to each other. Well, what does that relation mean? Well, it's a backlink, a link between one page and another, right? That's why backlinks in SEO and content are so incredibly important. Now, a lot of people try and game that system, but the reality is we did not spend 1 ounce of time thinking about backlinks when we, in the last year and a half, we've invested 0 time in backlinks. We've invested 100% of our time in connecting our own content together, right? Making sure that when it came to marketing attribution, that we're creating blog posts for each question that a customer asks, or creating a blog post for each type of search that we see consumers sort of ask, and then interconnecting that content together, and that forms a network. What we've seen in our results is if we write about something and we didn't have any content about it, it could be the best article on the planet. The chances of us ranking #1 on Google are almost none. We've never been able to do it. However, when we attack a content pillar, right? When we attack marketing attribution, we used our product to identify the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 pieces of content we needed to create. Then made sure that each piece of content had the right words,
Yep.
and then we linked it all together. So, oh, if you care about this, click here to read more about it in this article, right? That creates a natural network. One of the things I always hear from our customers and from other content marketers, they'll say, gosh, there are these things in and around this content pillar, but I don't care about them. And therefore, like, they don't apply to my business, and therefore I'm not going to write about them. And my answer is always, okay, then you might as well pack up and go home. You're probably not going to have a complete network if you're just choosing which pieces to write about. If consumers care about it, so should you. It doesn't matter how you sell, it matters how she buys, right? And you have to align to that behavior. And so then the next question I'll get is, well, then why should I write about something that doesn't really apply to me? Well, it might not apply to you. It might be farther up the funnel, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Then great, show links to other sites or solutions, right? How many blog articles have you seen where, like, oh, these are the top 5 places to go to solve this problem? That's perfectly fine. And then you've written about it, you've added value to that consumer. And at the end of the day, who do you turn to answer questions? You don't turn to people that you trust or that you don't trust, right? You turn to people that you trust.
Right.
Said another way, if you answer the questions your consumer has, you start to form that relationship with the customer, and they start to trust you. Even if you don't have the solution, you don't have to have the solution. You have to answer their question and add value and start to form that relationship.
Yeah.
And then good things will happen down the road.
Yeah. It's solving their pain in general, whether you can sell them something about it or not. Builds that trust. And it just makes me think about Wikipedia, interlinks to itself the
All
best
over.
of anyone, right? They just have, this article, this stub, this, that, this category, this, they're masters of it. So no wonder you see their results high up in there. I mean, even naturally, whether they tip it extra or not, it's interconnected. It is a complete resource
That's
on
right.
everything. But you don't have to be Wikipedia, but I could see be that complete, what'd you call it? The pillar, but complete network of the answers around that consumer's question. And I think one thing to highlight for people that I'm really reminded of on this conversation is that Google searches are consumer behavior, right? Because you mentioned this earlier, the data that's out there versus the data you have. The data you have inside that you brought in, you probably biased it in some way, shape, or form because you put it in categories, you're storing it somewhere, and maybe you don't have the full picture. But people searching for TVs do search for this other thing, and Google lets you know that because they know people are searching and they want to serve them. So it's not like they're trying to trick us all on the business side. They're saying, no, I'm serving the consumer. Here's what they're searching for now, and in the future, here's their tree, and that is like a unadulterated following that customer shopping at the mall at their home. Like you were seeing they started here and they went here and here and here. And to your point, ignore the fact that they're shopping around at your own peril.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Google, I look at Google and Bing and Baidu and DuckDuckGo, like all of the different search engines. They're a proxy for user behavior, right? They're aligning to user behavior. So is Amazon or Overstock.com or, pick a retailer. You used to go to 10, 20 years ago, you'd go to a product page and you'd see, oh, may we suggest these other products? And no one, and I think the consumer would say, no, you may not suggest, I don't trust you. So what do you see now? You see, hey, people that looked at this product also bought these other products, right? We trust those signals better as consumers.
Right.
But every company tries to align better to consumer behavior. The challenge is data. We don't have the data as marketers because we sell a certain product or a thing, and we spend all of our time guessing on which keywords we should pop in or this or that. And that guesswork comes with such waste in the marketing space. It's incredibly wasteful. If you just had a map, if you had like Waze for marketers that just said, here's how, if you're selling X, Y, or Z, these are the things that you need to write about, and here's what consumers are really doing, and here's the best way to align to it. Like that takes that's like the easy button for marketers. But it doesn't
Absolutely.
exist. Before Demand Jump, we just didn't believe that it existed. There's so many companies out there that just inundate you with data, but don't tell you what to do with it.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take it a step
Death by
further.
reporting. Here. I once had a question of an SEO firm. Hey, what have you been up to lately? Cue the Google Analytics report, avalanche when here's 80 things. Great. What does any of it mean?
And you're,
What takeaway do you have from any of that? Like, there's just nothing for me.
right. That is exactly right. And I think like your data is valuable, right?
Okay.
But what do we do with our data? Well, we optimize it, right? We learn from what we've done in the past to improve that going forward. But the gap is still, how do buyers behave, right? What is their journey? What is their path? And once you know that, it's almost like your own data doesn't matter anymore, right?
Yeah.
You just align to consumer behavior, and good things happen from there.
Wow, man, so many things moving and shaking. Curious, what keeps you up at night? What kind of challenges are you facing these days?
That's it's a great question. So I would say at Demand Jump, we set out to tackle two of the biggest problems that we didn't believe had been solved yet. One was really, how do you give marketers the easy button? How do you show them that lightning in a bottle, right? How do you make their jobs so much easier and take away a lot of the wasted time, effort, and spend?
Yeah.
And that led us to our insights product. What keeps me awake there is, I think, the same thing any product person would say, which is sort of what's next, right? What do we do next to constantly maintain our edge? We've got something I think no one else has, but it's never good enough, right? And then you always want that next thing. So one of the things we're working on right now, we've heard a lot of our content marketers say, starting from a blank canvas is a real pain in the butt, right? But if I could almost start with a few paragraphs, it kicks in the creativity, and I write much better articles.
Yeah, it's true.
So now we're using AI to write a draft paragraph, so we can not only hand them an outline, but give them a couple sentences in different areas to start with. I don't believe AI. Everyone's always scared of that AI will replace jobs. I don't believe AI is going to ever write good enough content that has your brand voice and tells the story the way that you want to tell it. It's just not going to happen. But if it can kind of give me that a little bit of an edge or a starting point, that means like, so we're using AI right now to do all your keyword and SEO research, produce a content outline for any piece of content, and now self-write sort of a few sentences in different sections of that content. That's not going to replace a content writer ever. That's going to improve the quality of their
Sure?
work.
I only need 200 sentences.
That's
200
right.
words.
I mean, look, the two stats that will floor you, two stats that will absolutely floor you. And one of these stats is about a year old, so I'm sure it's a bigger number, but 4.5 million blog posts happen every day. 4.5 million pieces of content released every day. That's over a year old. The second stat, over 90% of blog articles receive zero traffic. Well, hold on a second. 90%, that means only 1 out of 10 blogs gets traffic. That is mind-numbingly poor, right? That means that content, there's 90% waste in content marketing. So marketers need that edge. So that's the one thing that kind of keeps me up at night on our is sort of what do we do next to constantly innovate and challenge the status quo. Just because it's been done a certain way, we kind of oftentimes will say, if this is the problem, let's forget about everything about how everyone else is solving it and start over. Now, how do we innovate given today's world and today's tools and today's AI?
Man, content activation is such a thing. You have to mind it. The people that are just trying to create more and more, It's like we need to shake, like this is the podcast that shakes them. And for those listening, if you know someone who's creating content at the wazoo and they're not minding, is anyone actually reading this stupid thing? Shake them, send them an email, send them a meme and an email that wakes them up out of their stupor, because that's the problem. You can write and write and write for days, and it's not like that writing is quick either. These people are
No.
investing like their lifeblood into these articles, and then no one sees it. Like, let's make that not happen.
And we
Man.
have been guilty of that in 5 years, 4.5 to 5 years, from start to about 4.5, 5 years later. We had a full-time content person, and we had produced 116 blog articles with very limited results.
Yeah.
Right. It was the 117th article that was that "What is a good CAC" article that was the light bulb moment, and quickly generated so many inbound leads. One piece of content was generating, I think, 80% of our inbound leads, a single blog post.
Right.
And when I saw the results, I got so excited, because I was like, wow, if we could turn every piece of content, instead of writing 116 pieces of content over 4.5, 5 years that didn't work, what if we could get that time back? And what if every single one of those pieces of content had lightning in a bottle results?
Yeah.
Like, that would change the face of this company.
Yeah.
And the good news is that bet worked. I mean, to go 10x increase in organic traffic and leads in 1 year, I wish we would have figured this out earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. Right now, Neil Patel is sharpening up some sort of sword or something to come after you. He's like, damn it. Do you know how long I've been building that? This guy swoops in with some magic voodoo. But yeah, the point is so accurate. Would you want to be playing a slot machine where every 117 draws, you get a little ding, 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 and it's no, like, if don't make 117, make 12, but make them the right kind, the interconnected network, the kind that answers that whole question. That whole
Get out of your
point.
way too, right? Get out of your way and stop thinking about how it's going to benefit you. Think about it through the lens of the consumer. Right? If I can't, it makes me cringe every time someone says, yeah, I get that this is important to this category or area, but I don't want to write about it because it has nothing to do with our business. Okay.
Right.
That's kind of like walking in, like, how would you feel as a consumer walking in to buy a new car, go into the car dealership, you buy a new car, and right before you click the buy button, right before you sign the contract, you ask your salesperson, hey, what are the best tires to use for this tire or for this car, right? I love this sports car, but what are the best tires I should put on it? If his answer was, oh, I don't know, we don't sell tires. Well, really? Like, that would lead to a horrible user experience. And you'd probably go, okay, then why am I buying this car from you? Like, if you can't answer those questions or help me out, why should I help you and buy this car from you? I'll go down the street to someone that is going to help me. And that's content marketing, right? It doesn't matter how you sell. It matters how she buys. And if you align to that and help her out or him out along their journey, you're building a relationship of trust.
Yep.
And that matters in the end of it.
It's something that B2B can borrow from B2C. I mean, people know, you go to an e-com website, you're trying to check out any little bit of friction, any little bit of uncertainty. This is not going to work out. I can't trust these people, which you brought up, the trust. Then I'm out. I'm just not going to, I'll go somewhere else. I'll buy something else. And if I'm asking a simple question, do these plates have lead in them? And by the way, people, you should check your plates out because they probably have lead in them. We just went through a whole new plate buying thing, but they probably do. But if they can't answer that for you, they probably do. In which case, you probably shouldn't buy them. And then there's no sale. Same thing happens. And you may not even notice it on the B2B side because it's such a longer journey. But if you can't, address certain conditions, you may not get on the phone with sales. It's just not going to happen. So this is brilliant, man. Brilliant.
It's a great opportunity too for B2B companies to reevaluate and take a look at the content that they have. Like, you're trying to rank for one thing. Know that that oftentimes it might not have anything to, it might have something to do with that piece of content, but it might be the fact that you don't have enough content around that category or area that's linked together properly on your site. And because of that, the search engines believe you to be incomplete. You have an incomplete network. And if you have an incomplete network, then you're not the authority.
Right.
If you're
Incomplete,
not the
it's like
authority,
you could be a faker. You could have just been trying to trick them. Like that's almost like a trick signal. I'm just trying to trick you because I've got, half a dozen articles about this keyword, and it's not the whole, but it's not the whole buyer pillar, the journey.
that's right.
It's got parts of it, and then it's clear that you're doing SEO. You're just trying to show up for this keyword, but you're not thinking about the whole thing. So you're probably a site full of, lead capture pages. Great. You create a bunch of great magnets, but you don't actually know anything.
And everybody wants to just focus on the bottom of the funnel, right?
Right.
But if you have, at least with content, what we're seeing is if you don't have enough content around that network, you're never going to rank for the bottom of the funnel. So you don't have a choice. You have to kind of take a step back and think about it through the lens of the consumer or the buyer and what they go through along their journey, and make sure that you've got the right areas.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Dude, my next question is, who are you? How do you know these things? How have you been involved in all these top projects? Can you take us back in time? Who is Shawn? Take a little Shawn days. Where'd you grow up? Did you always know you're going to be just dominating the world of paths and networks and marketing and all this crazy material?
So I kind of high IQ. I'm pretty sure every point of IQ was stolen away from EQ.
Probably.
But I also was a bit of, I think, a rebel. So I got in a fight with my parents when I was in high school and ended up dropping out of high school. Got my GED and aced it. And then
did they kick you out, or you were able to stay?
Well, I moved out, and they
you
told
moved.
the
Yeah.
school
So
that,
the high IQ, and you're like, guys, I've already thought about this 9 times. That's just
they
wow.
told the school that I moved out of the school district. And so the school basically said, hey, in order to continue going to school here, you have to pay tuition. And it was like $800. And I had 3 months to go in my senior year of high school. So my parents thought, well, he'll have to move back now. But I was too stubborn and too much of a rebel. So I just said, nope, then I'm out. And went on my own. Now I have a great relationship with my parents now, but
yeah. Oh, good. Yeah.
Not at that particular time. As an 18-year-old kid, I was a little bit of a hellion.
Hell of a launch, though, huh? Did you have to grow up real quick at that point, or?
At that point, I did, and I was in the restaurant business. I thought I wanted to be a chef, and a year later, I realized, it's more of it's a passion, it's a hobby, but it's not a career. And I always wanted to be in computers, and so I went, and this was in 1992, 93. I went to the University of Cincinnati. Great school, but in the early 90s, computer science was so backwards. I was learning more talking to people at CompUSA or Best Buy or whatever than I was reading about technology that was, on punch cards when Windows 95 was about to launch. The colleges were so far behind in computer science, at least the ones that I had the ability to go to. So I went to school for 2.5 semesters and ended up dropping out. So I dropped out of high school, then I dropped out of college. And the best advice I got early in life was from my uncle, Jim, who said, he said, Shawn, I know you're in the restaurant business, you're trying to do this, you're trying to learn this on the side and go to college here. He said, I'm going to tell you something. If you want to learn something, you need to live it, eat it, breathe it, sleep it, shit it. Like, you need to do everything in and around that thing, dive into it. You're never going to get there. It's like death by 1,000 paper cuts if you try and learn it on the side. You're not committed. And I hated the advice in the moment, but it still to this day, I'll never forget the sort of feeling I had when I walked away from that conversation. I went, holy shit, he's absolutely right. I quit my job. And for an 19-year-old kid 19-year-old kid at that point, trying to make it on their own. And I quit working in the restaurant business, dropped out of school, and went literally door to door to a couple of different computer retailers in Cincinnati, and got lucky. I found one, that was a startup company. Dean Butler, the guy that started LensCrafters, had founded this, and it was a great startup opportunity. And they told me, Shawn, you know, you can't work more than 40 hours. We don't do overtime. And I said, okay, but then don't pay me more than 40 hours. And on the second week, my boss pulled me into his office and he said, Shawn, what the hell are you doing? You've got 70 hours on your punch card. And I was like, yeah. And he said, I told you I can't pay you for more than 40. And I said, yeah, what's the problem? And he said, well, I can't pay you for this other 30 hours. I'm not going to pay overtime. And I said, I know, then just pay me the 40. And he goes, well, why would you do that? I don't get it. Why would you work 30 extra hours? And I said, because I was very clear when I came here and told you, like, this is my education. I want to live it, eat it, breathe it, sleep it, shit it. I'm all in. And this is my education. I dropped out of school so I could get experience on the job and in the trenches. And he was blown away. 3 months later, I moved from like assistant, from a regular sort of sales associate. So imagine CompUSA walking in or Best Buy and seeing that person walking around, like that was me. 3 months later, assistant sales manager. 3 months later, sales manager. 3 months later, I was the store manager. A year later, I was the VP of operations, and we were rolling out, had a plan to roll out several hundred stores, but we ended up selling the company to Blockbuster Entertainment. Probably not the best person to acquire.
Wait, the actual Blockbuster? So Blockbuster bought CompUSA?
That's right. Bill Fields I think was had the vision at the time, but he also, his vision was almost like the Geek Squad in Best Buy, right? As video is dying in Blockbuster, let's take half the store and put in a Geek Squad, basically. Which was PC Upgrades, the startup I was working at.
And what he maybe should have bought was this thing called Netflix.
Well, he left. Bill Fields left.
Good.
Sumner Redstone came in and said, get out of anything that's not VHS related. And that seems to have been a wonderful strategy for.
Yeah, I think there's still one store left in Alaska. That's the last I've heard.
Exactly. So then from that startup, I just catapulted from one to the next. I've never been a 9 to 5 kind of person, because I learned some great advice in the early days that if you have to invest in your knowledge and invest in your career, that led me all over the country. I went from Cincinnati to Detroit, Memphis, Chicago, Salt Lake is where Overstock was, and then Scottsdale for a few years, and then now I'm in Indianapolis and I've been here the last 10 years, but probably 20. I've been involved with probably 20 different startup companies along the way, had some great wins and some phenomenal losses. And I say phenomenal because you learn from your mistakes, not your successes. And I believe people should celebrate their failure. That's how you learn, right? You fall, so you learn how to get back up.
Yeah. When things are going really well, you're just like, I'm not sure it's going well. I'm not sure how we got here. What's happening? When things go wrong, you're like, oh, I see.
In marketing, we call it A/B testing, right?
A/B testing. That's right. Your life. Absolutely. Hypothetical question for you.
Sure.
I may or may not have a time machine here with me in New Hampshire. And, COVID's over. Have you come over some beers and some lobster. We dust off the old time machine. We get to go back in time and see you. And we normally say, it's interesting because you're like peace to school, right? You even just wait for the computer science and whatnot. Did you just bounce out of university?
Yeah,
Right.
I dropped out halfway through my third semester and never looked back. Now I actually have taught a couple classes in college.
You get to go visit yourself 4 days after you dropped out of school and talk to yourself then. What kind of things would you tell yourself? What kind of recommendations, advice, and not for the world, just for you, knowing your journey that you've been through?
Yeah, I would say probably 3 major things I would tell myself. Number one, don't be afraid to make a mistake, because no one wants to make mistakes, right? And we all, it's sometimes there's such a fear of failure, and there certainly is with me. So why I've done startup companies as a career, I don't know, because only 1 out of 5 makes it. But but fear of failure, I needed to finally get out of my way and just charge forward and try something in order for it not to work, so that I learned how to do it right. And so not being afraid to fail, because that's how you learn. I haven't learned anything from the success. I've learned everything from the failures in life, and that has led to success. As a matter of fact, there's a great stat out there that they polled a bunch of millionaires and a bunch of non-millionaires, and they found that the difference between a millionaire and not a millionaire has nothing to do with pedigree. It has nothing to do with college, has nothing to do about where you grew up and what part of town, who your family was. None of that matters. The single greatest thing that separated millionaires from not millionaires didn't stop trying when they failed. People that that were not millionaires, when they failed on something, backed out and never tried again. So I would just encourage my young self to not be afraid to fail, learn from it, and iterate. Right. The second thing I would say is probably the most important marketing lesson that I wish I would have learned so much earlier, which we've kind of talked about, which is your data doesn't matter nearly as much as the data that you don't have. And so be on a quest for that, right? Look for data that guides you to how consumers behave, because once you figure that out, good things will happen. I spent way too much time, again, being an analyst, right? Diving into the data that I had, because that's all I had. But if I had invested more of my time into finding the bits of data that I didn't have, I would have gotten there so much faster in life.
Beautiful. Now that was 2. Was that 2?
That was 2. Gosh, the third.
That's okay.
One,
that's 2 big ones. I just want to make sure, because I think you said there's 3 things.
Yeah, the third one. The third one would probably be to try and find some sort of like work-life balance, but I don't even know what that phrase means, and so I probably wouldn't even give myself that advice. But I do think there needs to be a balance. When I work 70, 80, 90 hours a week, I just can't turn it off. But it's in those times I've learned, and this is sort of a recent, only in the last couple of years, I've learned this lesson, I guess. Getting out of my head and focusing on something totally different, all of a sudden the light bulb will go on for a problem that I was trying to solve in my career. Your mind has to let go of that thing, and get out of it. And so finding your passion or your hobby or something that will take your attention totally off of work and the problems, all of a sudden lets your brain work in a way that I have never anticipated. It's a balance.
Something else, like a non-marketing thing, if you're a marketer, or just something completely different.
It could be hiking or bicycling, running. I mean, if it's something outdoors, it could be something as simple as playing a video game. But whatever the passion is that you have, you've got to balance that with your work. And it's counterintuitive. You think it takes you away from work, or your work takes you away from your hobby. It allows your mind to get out of its way, right? It allows you to stop thinking about it. And then all of a sudden, subconsciously, your brain keeps going. But when you're thinking about it, you kind of, what's that saying? You can't see the forest through the trees sometimes.
Right.
You got to stop looking at the forest.
Right. So sometimes the shower, you're just like, why did I have all these great ideas? Because you weren't thinking just for a second about that meeting at work, but then you couldn't help it. Oh, eureka. What are some of the fun things that you do when you have time? You're not crushing your work days.
So I was actually at home, but my Wi-Fi, we were having internet connection, so I came over to our office. But at home, you would have seen my fridge, and then right next to my fridge, another fridge with about 6 taps on it. So I love to make beer. I never thought I would be the guy that would be like a homebrew kind of guy, but one of our first customers, our first customer at Demand Jump was a homebrew store, and we helped them like 10x their business inside of 6 months, I think. And I got, this was back before we did it kind of on trade, really, as the company was being formed. I basically just said, don't worry about paying me. I'm just doing this to kind of validate that this will work and we can form a company around it. He said, well, I got to pay you something. I said, well, give me an in-store creditor. So like, so whatever would work for you. And we never even set a dollar figure on it. And I think after a year, I had $15,000 worth of in-store credit. And so I ended up buying all this equipment and getting my dad into it, and making beer is definitely one. And I would say the other is travel. I love to travel. So I've been going nuts over the last year, but now that I'm fully vaccinated, I'm looking forward to going back overseas and kind of getting out of the country at least once or twice a year to see how third world countries live, and it just brings so much perspective.
Oh yeah, totally. I think a lot of people in this country could totally benefit from a little field trip, forced or not, to go visit a country where they don't actually have plumbing, and you have to deal with that. It puts life in perspective. You totally appreciate everything, and but there's beauty in those places too.
I got to cash out after overstock, and I took 14 months off to go travel around the world.
Wow. Where'd you go? Any highlights? Any favorites?
Yes. So I saw 34 countries in 14 months. My job was travel, so it was a great job. And I would say the top two places, I love Spain and a lot of the islands in and around Spain. I just love that whole area. But the number one place was Thailand. I've never seen so much poverty, right? People literally living on shacks on stilts, right? Because of the rainy season, but such a happy and sweet culture, and so funny. I had, in 6 weeks that I was there in Southeast Asia, Thailand has a special place in my heart. I had such a wonderful time walking 6 blocks down Bangkok. In 6 blocks, I had 9 people come up to me and just say, hey, do you need anything? Are you okay? Are you, like, imagine a US city where that would happen. I mean, is there a city in the US that has ever happened? Like, I can't think of one. Actually, if I'm in New York, it's sometimes a little, it can be a little negative, right?
Stay away. Yeah.
6 blocks, 9 different people came up just to see if I was okay and needed anything, because I kind of looked out of place. It was just such a sweet culture.
Huh. I want to talk more about Thailand. That happened to me at a subway in Tokyo, where they didn't have transliteration of the stops, so they're all in kanji, and you had to count the dots between where you were and where you wanted to go to figure out what station to get to. And our hotel map had the names, but we're trying to figure out where we are, and I'm like staring at the map, and someone, hey, excuse me, do you need? We're like, yes, please. Like, what station is this even?
Right.
They're helping us. But yeah, something about Thailand. I've only had a chance to go there once, and only in Bangkok. Did you get out to any of the beaches or any of the surrounding
I
towns?
did. Yeah, I started in Koh Samui and Koh Phangan, which are 2 islands. So Phuket is on one side of the peninsula, and Koh Phangan and Koh Samui are on the other side. And there's a diving island right near there called Koh Tao. But I started in the islands, then went to Bangkok, then took a train ride, an overnight train ride from Bangkok up to the northern part of Thailand, Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai. And it reminded me of an Indiana Jones movie, and like a can of WD-40 would have gone a long way on that train, right? But I remember because it was just, everything was Rika. But there were chickens, I think, and livestock, and in one of the cabs or whatever, one of the train cars. But I'll never forget going to the bathroom, right? And you kind of lift up the seat, and there's no plumbing. It was just a hole, and all you saw were the tracks underneath.
Flying by as you're going really fast on the train.
Yeah, but got to Chiang Mai and Chiang Rai, and then kind of went into Laos, and then ultimately back to Bangkok. But I spent a good 6 weeks there. It was supposed to be 3 or 4 weeks, and I kept extending it because the sweetest people. Number one, it's difficult. It's literally on the other side of the planet.
Yeah.
You put a a needle through the earth in the Midwest. The other side is Thailand.
Yeah.
And so it's literally the other side of the planet. So it takes, it took a while to get there. 26 hours of planes, trains, and boats and automobiles to finally get to the islands. The best experience of my life from a travel perspective, hands down, no question. It was unbelievable.
What is it about it? Because I noticed two things. I noticed one about 15 seconds after I leave the hotel air conditioning, I am drenched in sweat.
Yes.
And then two, everyone's smiling. And you
Yes.
mentioned the poverty but they're like literally smiling and not even, now they didn't talk to me, but I probably didn't look friendly, but people were smiling at me at least.
Yeah.
And you're right, in New York, other places, it's smile. No, you're inviting some bad conversation. No, they're just smiling at have a happy day. Here's my smile.
Yeah. I went
Why
to
why are they like that?
this is the unexplainable thing that I just can't wrap my head around. Like, I've never seen so much poverty and
Yeah.
such a happy, sweet culture.
Yeah.
They really do have a very friendly, they're like, just innately, they want to help and they want to laugh and they want to have a good time. And so when you mix that, right, like normally poverty, when you see that much poverty, you don't think about fun. You think that they're not having fun. These people had more fun than Americans have, just laughing and joking around with each other. But I went to a Muay Thai like boxing
Did you?
match
Did you?
and
Oh,
got to
an
see
actual
that.
match?
There were like 2 or 3 different matches, and it is what you would expect it to be, right? You go into this little kind of building and you see the kind of boxing ring up there, and I'll never forget, like, I was sitting down and I was wearing sort of Thai pants, which were kind of baggy. And all of a sudden I had like 3 people like tapping me on the shoulder, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on? Am I going to get mugged? And they all were pointing to my wallet, and one person was holding it, was like, your wallet fell out. And I was like,
Oh
oh,
shit.
if I were in a major US city, like, that wallet would have been gone. No one would, like,
It would
I
be at
just,
Macy's right now spending something.
exactly, right. I'd be making a bunch of phone calls, canceling all my credit cards and trying to figure
Jesus.
out what to do about it. But that was just another sign of how sweet this culture is. Even I took a couple days in Thailand and we went up some of the mountains on like a backpacking excursion, and the guides that were taking us were just a laugh a minute. One of the girls was like, "Oh my God," and the guide went, "Oh my Buddha," and they're Buddhists. It was hilarious. They're just such fun and sweet people.
Yeah, I would totally go back there. That's definitely high up on that list. Post-COVID travel and all that,
Exactly.
is to get back there. It's funny. You went to a match. I had a chance to do this experience where it was a kickboxing lesson, and it was with Sagat, who was one of the champions of Thailand, a decade or two ago. And Sagat is the name of a bad guy in the Street Fighter video games,
Yeah.
and it's because the Japanese programmers at the time went on vacation to Thailand, saw Sagat fight, was like, this guy is one bad mofo. And then they named their bad guy after him. And so I had a chance to go and be in one of his like outdoor open air Thai kickboxing gyms. They got us all shorts, so I was like, I had shorts with my name and Thai on them on the side.
That's
And
awesome.
we were like, wrapped up and we went through drills, and I had like a karate background. So I was just like eating it all
So
up,
do I.
and some people were just like their first time. But I gotta say, moment of truth was when I was doing some front kicks or some side kicks. I think Sagat was holding the bag, and he was expecting not as much as I gave him, and it was like he was impressed by this, wimpy white American coming from America to kick a bag, and I had a little spice to that kick, and he was like, gave me a little nod, and I was like, boom, that's good.
You were in martial arts.
I'm good. What's that?
You were in martial arts.
Yeah.
Which I was too. I was in Taekwondo for 5.5 years and then Tang Sudo for 5.5 years. I have a first degree black belt in each. Now I haven't practiced since I was 18. But I remember starting way young. I was like 7 years old or something. And I think stopped right around 18, 19. But which?
Yeah. Same here. First degree. And it's with, Weichi Ryu.
Oh yeah,
Okinawan style, very much Mr. Miyagi would be our epitome
traditional.
of the style. Very grounded. Not exactly the flying front kick like in the movies, but everything else is pretty accurate.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so I could definitely kick. But it was interesting because in that class, we were kneeing, we were doing all sorts of interesting things that are in elbows, all sorts of really, things that are pivotal to that. Have you ever pondered going there for like a month long kickboxing boot camp?
Yeah, maybe 10 or 15, 20 years ago. I'm 47 years old,
Right.
right? So I'm down to sand volleyball is like the last sport I can play without, because if I fall on sand, right? I probably might
Right.
blow an ACL or whatever.
Right.
So I'm literally down to the last sport I can play without ending up in the hospital. So I would probably pass. But
Okay.
20
We
years
don't
ago,
got to
I
keep
would
that.
definitely do it.
Maybe
So
it's, beach volleyball, it was a Pattaya, just one of the beach cities. And that's good. That's gonna,
maybe
uh,
surfing. Maybe I should take up surfing.
little, well, maybe wakeboarding. Yeah, well, that's incredible, man. So this has been good. Hey, where can people connect with you if they want to reach out, learn more about Demand Jump, connect with you? What are some good sites for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say the first step is come to Demand Jump. If you like what you heard, we actually have a free trial to the product that you can get a lot of
Free.
value from. So, and it takes like 2 or 3 quick steps and no credit card required. So you can come to demandjump.com, click the start a free trial button, and then let there's a number of people then that will reach out to kind of help you and tell them, hey, I want to talk to Shawn, and I'll get on the phone with you for sure.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. Swap some more travel stories because there's 33 other countries we're all going to have to find out about. So
Yeah,
maybe that's another episode. You come up with that next product you've been thinking about, and you come back on here. We'll talk more about that and some more countries,
absolutely.
and we'll get into Thai food, and we'll be really good. So
That's awesome,
awesome.
Casey.
Well, hey, I would encourage everyone, definitely go sign up for a demo, free trial. Actually, it's even better than a demo. Go sign up for a free trial, get that information, complete that pillar, that content pillar. You build that network out. Google will bless you for sure. They will.
Absolutely.
Shawn Moon, this has been great, dude.
Casey, thank you so much for making time for me. I really enjoyed our conversation. And as
Absolutely. Big
always,
thank
I
you.
remain a big fan of the show.
Hey, well, hey, we'll see you on the next one. And for those listening, this has been the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.